covering the chart of accounts screen in the accounting module in Church Windows. My name is Jim. I'm coming to you live on an overcast day here in Columbus, Ohio. Welcome on in here. We're going to be spending the next 20 minutes or so discussing that topic. Before we go ahead and get started on that, however, a word about your GoToWebinar control panel that you guys should all have on your screens there. It's got a little red arrow button usually in the upper left hand corner of it that allows you to either minimize or maximize that control panel. You minimize it in order to get a little more room on your monitor to see what we're discussing in our webinar here today. You maximize it to get access to the different features there, specifically the questions portion. I'm here all by myself today, so I may not get to any questions that you type in until the end of the presentation. But once I am completed with the presentation, I will leave the room open for a little bit to answer any questions that you have at that point. In the meantime, let's go ahead. Oh, the other thing I did want to mention that if you do have our regional training workbooks with Church Windows, the topics that we're going to be covering in today's class is from the Accounting 102 Regional Training Workbook. It's going to be pages 2 through 15 in there. That's the document I'm using as my guide here today. Oh, right, yes. My microphone is live. Everybody else's microphone is muted there. There are so many folks here in the webinar today that if I opened all the microphones up, there'd be so much crosstalk. Nobody'd be able to hear anything. So that's by design, by the way the webinars here work. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on our presentation. I'm going to go ahead and launch the accounting module. This window that opens up here is called the Accounting Portal. There are two sections to that portal. Everything below this line here is our opening image map with shortcuts to different parts of the Church Windows program. If I wanted to get into our reporting section, I would just click on the Reports button. If I wanted to get to entering income, I would click this button, etc. Along the top of it is what is called a button bar along the top. The buttons that are available up there change based upon which of the tabs you select along the top. So if I come to my Reports/Export tab, for example, the buttons change and we have access to all of our various reports. If I come to my Manage Accounts tab, the buttons change again. Okay, so that is navigating around in the Church Windows program. So if I, for example, did go to the Manage Accounts, I could click on my Accounts plus minus button. This is a place where I can go to add or delete various accounts on my chart of accounts. Okay, getting to the chart of accounts screen, which is the focus of our presentation here today. You can get there by going up one of two different places. They both take you to the same screen. On the opening image map, we can simply click here where it says Manage Accounts. From the button bar along the top, if we go to the Manage Accounts tab, we can then use the View button right here. Both buttons take us to the same Chart of Accounts window. Let's go ahead and click on Manage Accounts, and that takes us here to a window that is titled Chart of Accounts. Let me make that a little bit bigger by adjusting the size of my window. Okay. What we're looking at here in the panel on the left side of our Chart of Accounts window, to the left of this, over here, is a listing of all of our accounts that we have set up here in our Chart of Accounts. You're going to see a series of headers up there. For example, like number 1, Asset. All of the accounts listed below that are all of the assets that you have set up in your Chart of Accounts. There's your liabilities, etc. You see 5 different types of accounts listed under here. As I scroll down, you'll see a header for our fund balances here. You'll see a header for all of our income accounts here, and as I continue to scroll down, the fifth type of account are all of our expense accounts down at the bottom. If you see a small, so we've got a couple of columns here. So there's an account number column, which is this column right here, which gives you the numbers if you're using numbers for your chart of accounts for all of your accounts. You've got an account name column right here that then gives you the name of each of those accounts. In that account number column, if you see a plus next to the number, that is what's called a ledger account. That means that there are sub-accounts listed underneath that. So for example, if I select our pass-through accounts liability right here, you'll see that there is a small plus button next to that. Clicking on that plus button expands your pass-through accounts ledger and shows all of your sub pass-through accounts listed underneath that. So this is here for organizational purposes on your chart of accounts screen itself. It is also an organizational way to organize your chart of accounts for reporting purposes as well. We're going to talk more about that in just a moment. But that's what those little plus buttons next to your account numbers does for you. Another feature here on your chart of accounts is here in the upper left-hand corner, which is right here, which is the search box. This allows you to locate, especially for folks with larger chart of accounts, accounts there either by name or by number. So if you simply click in that box and type in, if you happen to know what the number is, let's see, what was that? 04. Okay, so there, account number 5.10.400, I simply type 1 or 5104, and it'll select the grounds maintenance expense account. If I click on that, I also could have pressed the enter key on my keyboard, and it will take you directly to that account on there. You can also type in by name. So if I'm looking for our flowers income account, simply type in the word flower. You'll see that flower income account. If I press the enter key on my keyboard, skips me straight there. You'll see it highlighted at the top of your chart of accounts there. Okay. So from this window, that is one of the ways that you can navigate from account to account. Now we want to talk about all of the things to the right of this bar here, including the various tabs that we have along the top on here. We're going to start by taking a look at our Detail tab, which is the first one that you see on the screen. I'm going to start by, and the other thing I want to point out is that the information on the Detail tab right here changes based upon what type of account you have selected on the left side of the screen. So I'm going to start by selecting one of our asset accounts, which is our Huntington Bank checking account. You may have seen all of our information change over here on the right side. Starting with this long-term checkbox right here. This is for assets or liability accounts that are not to be used or turned over for over a year or in case of a debt. It'll take you a while to pay off. Or it's not something that is paid into very often, which makes it a long-term type of account. For example, a CD account such as this might be one that you would mark as a long-term type of account on there. The other checkbox you can see up there at the top is an inactive checkbox right here. The inactive checkbox, what that does for you is it doesn't delete an account from your chart of accounts. What it does is it marks it as inactive. What that means is that when you're posting new transactions in the accounting module, inactive accounts won't be available to post new transactions into them. Many reports that you print in accounting, most of them will by default show your inactive accounts. It just means you're not able to post activity to them. Certain reports will allow you to either show or not show inactive accounts when you print those reports. The other thing about those accounts that are marked as active or inactive, I want to draw your attention down here to the lower left-hand corner of the screen here for display options. And down there you have the ability, when you first open the chart of accounts, it displays all of your accounts, whether they're active or inactive. You can uncheck show inactive, and now it's only going to display your active accounts on here. You can do the same thing for inactive accounts. We don't have any right now in the system, but let's say, for example, we want to stop using our education building contributions. We had some renovations we were going to do for those. Our campaign for that has ended. We don't want to record any income into that education building contributions any longer. I can mark it as inactive. It won't show up on future transactions that you can set up. Also, you'll notice if I only show inactive accounts, that then it does show in this view. So that's what those checkboxes do down in the lower left-hand corner there. Okay. All right. So another thing that you'll see for various accounts over here is this Add to Ledger button over here under the Detail tab on the right side of the screen. What that does is it allows you to move accounts to and from these ledgers. So for example, let's take this Michelle's Crafts liability account over here on the left side. This is one of our vendors that we have in our system. Many times our vendors in our chart of accounts would show up here under accounts payable. So if I expand accounts payable, this generally speaking is where all of our various vendors will show up. So if I wanted to move that Michelle's Crafts account, which is right here, into the accounts payable ledger, I can select Michelle's Crafts. I can click on my Add to Ledger button right here. You'll see a new drop down appear underneath it for main ledger, and I click on my down arrow, and here are all of my accounts that are valid to act as ledgers. I can select accounts payable. And then all I have to do, you'll notice there's no button or no save button or anything like that. If I just hit the tab key on my keyboard to move out of that field, it will automatically move that account. So now over here underneath accounts payable, if I scroll to the M's, you'll see Michelle's Crafts listed in there. So another thing that you can do is remove an account from a ledger. So for example, here under pass-through accounts, if I wanted to move Soup Kitchen out from being a sub account and I wanted to make it its own separate ledger account, I can select Soup Kitchen on here. I can click my Remove from Ledger button over here, and now you'll see that appear outside of our pass-through accounts. So that's moving accounts to and from these sub-account formats here. Okay. Let's scroll back up to the top and select our Huntington Bank checking again. Some of the other options that you'll see under the Detail tab. There is a Print button that you'll see over here on the right side. This can print a report that will show you all of the activity that has affected that account. So when I click on Print, there's some it prints a general ledger report for that account. There's a whole bunch of different options on here. Let's go ahead, and I think we've got activity in March in our training data here. So let's run that for March 2017, and it'll print a general ledger report for that account that you have selected. There's all of the different transactions that are affecting the totals during that month. Okay. For asset accounts on your chart of accounts, some of the other things that you'll see under the Detail tab include the bank name, and the bank account number. So you'll also see those listed over here on the right side for asset accounts. So if you were to print a deposit slip report from the Church Windows accounting module, it'll use that bank name and that bank account number on that deposit slip report. Okay. Let's go ahead and scroll down here, and I'm going to select one of our fund balance accounts. So I'm going to select our general operating fund balance. And now you'll see that we have a drop-down list that says asset. The way fund accounting works is there is no direct link between an asset account, which is something that you own, like a bank account or the value of your buildings and grounds and things along those lines, investments, things that you own. There's no direct line between assets and funds are just kind of separate groups of monies that you have set aside for a designated purpose. Okay. There is nothing in our system that enforces money going into or out of a particular fund be assigned to a particular asset. But you can link your general operating fund balance to, let's say, our Huntington Bank checking asset right here. What that does for you is if you are doing a transaction, for example, posting income, what it's going to do is when you try to post a transaction that is affecting your general operating fund balance, that then is not affecting your Huntington Bank checking, what it's going to do is it's going to give you a little pop-up window letting you know that you're not posting it to the associated asset account. So it's just a little warning message letting you know that you might be getting yourself off track with your fund being linked to your asset. It's not going to enforce it, but it's going to warn you that you're doing it and give you the opportunity to correct that transaction. Okay. So that is if you do have your chart of accounts set up in a way that you wish to have a fund linked to an asset, that will allow it to give you a little warning prompt if you're doing it in the wrong manner. Okay. Let's continue to scroll down, and I'm going to select one of our income accounts, general tithes and offerings. All of your income accounts and all of your expense accounts are by default linked to one of your funds. Incomes and expenses are designed to show the flow of money into and out of your various funds that you have set up in Church Windows. And this drop down here is how you set up those linkages. All of your incomes, all of your expenses will have something selected here. If, for example, I wanted to move my rental income from the general operating fund and instead have that be income recorded to our building fund, you can make that change here. Okay, now all of our activity, all of our income that was recorded to rental income here for the 2017 year is going to be moved where it was from the general operating fund into the building fund. So it's just recording which fund this income belongs to is what you do on there. Okay, that goes for income accounts as well as expense accounts. A couple more things we do want to point out. We are running short on time as we always do. Two other tabs that we have here at the top of the screen. We have a balance tab and a tree view tab. The balance tab is going to show us just that, our balances. So let's go back up to the top here. I'm going to select my Huntington Bank checking. I'm going to click on my balance tab. It's going to show us our beginning balance at the beginning of our financial year. Let me move this out of the way real quick. Show you that we are running on a calendar year that goes from January to December of 2017. So that beginning balance that we see right here is the beginning of the day balance on January 1st, 2017. Then Here's our balance at the end of January. Here's our balance at the end of February, March, April, and then there's our current balance at the bottom right down here. So you'll see that for all of the various accounts. If I go to an income account like general tithes and offerings, our beginning balance is always going to be 0 because income and expense accounts are designed to record the flow of money for this current financial year. So the last thing I want to show you before I let everybody get on with their day is our Tree View tab right here. This is a very cool tab. If you collapse all of this, it shows all of our assets, all of our liabilities, and all of our funds. Assets and liabilities are very straightforward. It's the same format you see over here on the left side. So there's our assets. You can collapse or expand them by clicking on the little button next to the name. There's all of our liabilities. But when I expand funds, this is really cool because it's going to show us our general operating fund that we have set up in the system. When I expand that, it's going to show us a list of all of our income accounts that are linked to our general operating fund here. It's also going to show us a list of all of our expense accounts linked to it, listed below here. You have the ability to add or delete accounts right here from the tree view here on our chart of accounts window. If you right click and on any of the accounts or subtotals that you have on here, not subtotals but headings, it's going to give you a list of all of the things that you can do from here. So if I were to right click on our general operating fund, I can add an income account to the general operating fund, an expense account, or I can edit that fund. Editing that fund is simply a matter of changing the account number, the name of that fund, etc. If I right click on assets up here, it gives me the option to add a new asset. So whatever it is you're pointing your mouse at when you right click, if I point my mouse at income accounts here under the general operating fund, it only gives me the option to add a new income account to the general operating fund. So it knows what you're pointing your mouse at when you right click, and it gives you an option to edit that. So if I wanted to add a new income account, I would simply right click, and then it would give me an option to make a new account name with a number, and it will allow me to add that to my general operating fund. Okay, so that is our chart of accounts window and the basics of navigating it and some simple things that you can do with that window. I'm out of time here today, so I'd like to thank you guys so much for joining me here today. If you're all set to get on with your day, feel free to click on the X in the upper right-hand corner of your GoToWebinar control panel. That's going to exit you out of the room here. For folks who are leaving, thank you so much for joining me here today.